Great, amazing morning to ya. Rise and shine up and at 'em. You see, you got to get my little hairpiece. Yeah. You know when you have that one piece of hair that just want to fly? Right. I was trying to play it off. I just figured I'd tell you because we're that transparent with each other that if I look like I'm on the zigs or whatever, I need you to let me know. That's what we do. It's Friday. You're officially tuned in to Coffee and Conversation with Collette, and I'm Collette, and I do my curtsy because that's what I do. Because as I share with you, I know I don't take for granted. I know that you could be anywhere, doing anything, watching anything, preparing to ingest what they're telling you, not trying to have a conversation, but just to be programmed. And I know that you don't want that. So you make the conscious decision to tune into WHPR, TV 33, or Comcast 91, or Roku, or whatever it is, smoke signal, streaming live, whatever you did to get here. Because you determined that you wanted a conversation that was going to educate, enlighten, and empower. And as we always say, there's more than one way to have a conversation. We could always agree to disagree because that's what family does. But I promise when we close this chapter, when we close our 2-hour session together, we're going to say something that says, aha. You might go throughout your day and say, you know what? So-and-so might have been right. Maybe I need to think about that. Maybe I need to delve a little bit deeper into that. Maybe I need to start looking at things in a different way, change my narrative, because it's so easy for someone to give you your narrative. Remember, that's the easiest thing. We always talk about they say. I talked a couple years ago, the book of Noam Chomsky is what they say. So we fall into what they say. And so who is they? It's that quote unquote mainstream media who dictates, determines, creates the messaging that will oppress, creates the messaging that promotes discrimination, prejudices, a lot of times racism. That's what it does. And so we believe that. And even more so, I think to each other, we're worse to each other. People of color are worse to each other because we magnify those negative stereotypes. Because it doesn't mean that it's applicable. It doesn't mean that every black person is lazy. It doesn't mean that every Mexican is lazy. Remember, we did a cartoon caricature, and we assessed what those cartoons were giving those messages back in the day. Remember Speedy Gonzalez, and he had that friend who was always tired and lazy. Remember those things? Those were actual depictions of ethnicities, groups of people. But it was subliminal, so you didn't really realize it was happening. Well, now it's overt. So it's right in your face right now. It's in your face that, you know what, immigration, we don't need that. We don't need your type. Now, we'll take certain type of immigrants. Not looking at the reality is that everyone who came over to these Americas, especially for the original people that were here, that you brought yourselves over here, that you were immigrants. Who would have wanted you? Those weren't the type. I bet if the original people had the option of having the conversation, they would have said, oh no, we would have put up a wall back then. Your ship wouldn't have been able to land on our shore. How do you like that? But you don't think about that. No one ever thinks about that. You never think about if the shoe was on the other foot, or what they say sometimes, it ain't no fun when the rabbits got the gun. You don't think about that, because that's why, and we've talked about that a couple of weeks ago, with the census concerns that by between 2043 and 2045, that the majority of people in the United States will be people of color. And so those that power base, that percentile that determines everything that happens to not be of color, they don't want that because it's usurp of their authority. Then they know that you will have the numbers. They know that you will have the representation to actually yield to your will. Everyone will yield to your will just by mass numbers. And so they projected that. That is what they forecasted because they believe who they are. No matter what their situation is, mind you, they believe that they are privileged. They believe that they are walking in purpose. They believe that if they don't have, it's because everyone else has taken it away from them. That the rest of us have ceased in what makes America great. And if they were in the power seat yet again, if they were the dominant culture in America, then America would be made great again. But no one has turned on the light bulb and said, America was not ever great because of you. America was made great on the backs of black and brown and tan folk. We were the builders. We are the builders, not were, past tense, present tense. We are the builders. We are the innovators. We are the cultural icons. We are the originators of everything that is good. We are the first originators of life. So how can it not come through us? is what I'm asking you. And sometimes you need to bring things into your subconscious. You need a regeneration. You need a remembrance. A lot of you all don't want to think about those past lives, but in our spirits, we have to bring something to consciousness because it's been dormant. And you have to bring into your subconscious this enlightenment that you are great. Because we don't know that. And we have the history. I'll give you the examples. And when I say, oh, Coleman Alexander Young, you're like, oh, yeah. He was making millionaires. He was making the downtown. He was making the communities better. He promoted pride and that individual I am great attitude. You all talk about Muhammad Ali, okay, and everything that he stood up for to make Black people believe that you were better, that we are better. James Brown, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. Come on. Marvin Gaye, to talk about what is going on that oppresses us, but the bigger mindset is who we are. It's about us. And so I presented to you yesterday, and I know you all were really quiet. You didn't like it. And it's so funny how I get the conversations offline. And I appreciate that you're even comfortable enough with me to talk about it offline. I get the conversations offline. Someone shared, well, Collette, you were telling the truth, but I didn't have a comment. Did you think about that? So you didn't have a comment because if it's something that puts the ownership on you, you don't know what to do. Because we're so busy and it's so easy for us. And what we've been led to believe is that the only thing we have to do is keep pointing the fingers at somebody else to save us. So it's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. But if you realize that if you exercise your voice and your vote and the power through your revenue, the power that you can create, that it wouldn't be their fault. If you don't have, it's your fault. I showed you clips because a lot of times people want to believe, oh, well, if you've come from privilege, then you have it easy. You all saw Sheila Johnson yesterday, came from a privileged background, that elite background, that talented 10th background. Dad was one of the first 11 neurosurgeons, Black men in America. So you know she grew up privileged. She grew up in the Lynx and the Jack and Jill before there were Lynx and Jack and Jills and the debutantes and all the likes. Man, I just found out my mama was a debutante. Great morning, parents. Who knew? Saw pictures. So she was formally introduced to society. Those were some different class dynamics back then. Not everyone did that, but it was the first thing that Sheila said to you. Oh, don't get it twisted. Don't get it confused that we were still blocked. So not only were people who have privilege blocked from the majority of group who was of privilege, but then isolated from people that looked like them that didn't have privilege. And what did she say? Her quote, no matter whatever it looked like, we were still who they said we were. So no matter what, I still look at you as, we don't say that word on the air, but we say it off the air. But you all know what I meant. And so with understanding that, I said, okay, well, let me give you one group. And then we saw the Browns from Brown Capital Management. They poor coming up from Alabama and said, okay, and true, it was an era, as a time. Timelines mean everything. Where we are in society definitely, I believe, has an impact on what you're able to create and sustain itself. And so they were able to create a financial investment firm, Brown Capital Management, where they managed some $8 billion in assets. And they were able to buy and accumulate properties and create wealth and then still be philanthropic. And then we had an amazing young lady, first-time caller, who called in, and her conversation has stayed with me that she has been an entrepreneur and has raised, I believe, 6 children, has 11 grandchildren, and no one wants to buy into the business. Everyone says, well, we look at how it took your life. Well, it took my life to give you life. If I didn't sacrifice and do what I needed to do in a business that she believes generates a clear sum, $250,000, that's $250,000, which is amazing. Majority of us don't make that in a job. Even with expenses, if you're able to clear $100,000, most of us don't make that in a job. And so it was because of that her family is able to live the lifestyle that they have lived. And so sometimes we wonder, maybe we just need the struggle. Because if we had the struggle, then you have the appreciation. And so maybe that's the challenge that we're having when we see immigrants who are dying to get over to this country, who are risking their lives, parents who are pushing their children alone for a better opportunity if it means that I have to stay back, if it means that I have to separate myself from you. So much so of what happened with us in slavery. We were torn apart from our children. never, a majority of us never knowing or seeing them again, knowing what the outcomes of their lives are. And so much so today, the mindset that tears us apart from our children and our families, and not setting the tone in the direction which sets us aside from them, not knowing what it's going to be for them as they mature and grow up and have families of their own. And then those individuals and those entities in which we pay homage to, do you wonder, it's so easy, and yes, and you can get me on this one, that's fine. I'm a big girl. I can have conversations. I'm going to bring it to our attention. So there was an article in the newspaper yesterday. NAACP, Detroit NAACP was actually the 27th. Detroit NAACP, Trump's separation of immigrant kids is like slavery. And so, quote, babies are being ripped from their family by our government, said the Reverend Wendell Anthony, head of the Detroit chapter of the NAACP, one of the civil rights group's largest and most influential branches. Quote, this policy and practice must end now. This policy is unacceptable. This should not be what our nation is about. Okay, well, I get that from a national perspective, but what are we doing locally? Though that policy for us having still the travesties of Flint is not good for us. The policy of still not having the adequate educational system is not good for us. The policy of still not having adequate housing, and people are still losing their housing because of inequitable taxes, because we didn't fight to explain to everyone, which it should be common sense, that if the value of the home has depreciated and the taxes have not adjusted, people are underwater, and then how dare us take properties away? But where were the likes of these organizations then and now? Prison to pipeline, are we in protest? Having a sound, or is it just because we want a sound bite? We want to say something that sounds like we're relevant, because Detroit is supposed to have the largest NAACP chapter in the country. But we do a sound bite, but it doesn't resonate at home. And then those of us are so out of touch, I believe. We're like, oh yeah, they said that, but no one's saying, what are you doing at home? And so as I continued on our conversation yesterday, I set the tone that what are we going to do for us? What if we believe that we were not who they say we are? What would our lives look like? I then showed us a clip, a conversation between Warren Buffett and Jay-Z. And they talked about the concept of luck. And what did Warren Buffett say? Well, you know what? Hey, I grew up in Nebraska in 1930. The expectation for me as a white boy was different for that of my sisters. Not saying that they weren't smart and intelligent, but the expectations were different, and I was able to birth into a capitalist mindset that has created the wealth that he has today. And then we juxtapose that to Jay-Z by saying, well, guess what? You all know where I grew up, in poor, deplorable conditions, where perhaps I did things that people would not agree with. And I think it's so interesting that how we're so judgmental of ourselves when we're not bearing the brunt. We're not bearing the burden. Jay-Z talked about living in a box where you have people left, right, on top and below you, and manage issues and relationships that you have to manage to just survive. And so that's the box that we live in today. That's the box that we put in literally and figuratively in our lives on today, of how we either best manage or we don't manage, and it determines our outcomes. And so based on what you're given, then what will you do? What will you do to survive? What will you do to be able to put food on the table? I'm talking about survival. I'm not talking about thriving and excelling. I'm talking about the bare necessities. What will you do? And so right now, you still sit and want to point the finger. And as I've shared, we're in prime political season, and we don't have a plan, but we're so keen to have these candidates to hold them accountable for us and to us because of their plan. Versus, no, you will be beheld to me because I have a plan. That is my power. And what did Sheila Johnson say yesterday? Well, we just give our power away. It's all about power. And a lot of us, yes, power is yielded with money, of course, but collective action brings power as well. So if a group of people believe that what they say is not who we are, what they say we can and cannot do doesn't define who we are, and I'm going to do something a little different. So I'm going to buy up my block of homes. And no one has to understand that, but I'm going to sacrifice, and I'm going to buy it up, and me and my family, and we're going to rehab it, and we're going to put our families and members in it, and we're going to keep it crime-free to the best of our ability, and to show pride in where we live. And we're going to do that. And ultimately, because you all see that the market is changing, the value is going to increase in our properties, and then we're going to be able to create some sustainable wealth. And then on top of that, we won't have mortgages because we would have bought the properties outright, and then we have more disposable income. no one wants to have that plan, but we could sit and watch people talk about how everybody else is buying up properties in the cities in which we live, and that we're sitting by watching them. We're watching them. And we're not even astute enough that if our house is underwater and the house right next door to you, the same house, same neighborhood, same features, things that you like, if they lost that house and it was for $7,000 and your house is underwater, why wouldn't you just buy that house and move next door? We want to do that because you want to be attached to this depreciating asset. We want to be attached to things because we believe that those things create our value versus us saying, you know what? Hey, it's an asset. If it is depreciating, that means if it's going down in value, then I don't have to hold on to it. I can watch you depreciate, move over here, save that money. Then when you drop down low, I'll buy that back and move somebody in it. Y'all remember Monopoly? Didn't you play Monopoly? You didn't realize that Monopoly can be real? You didn't think about that? You just thought it was this board game. You just think that everything that you see, everything that has been visualized to you, you don't believe that you can actually do it. You know, the programming that's happening right now. So when you see these robots talking, the iRobot or trying to be human, that's already in effect. It's not like, oh, I'm just playing it. No, it's here right now. Here right now. Just waiting for society to be comfortable enough until it's introduced. It's like cars driving themselves. You all have that, what's that thing that you talk to? Siri, is that her? And everyone, oh, so now you want to talk and tell somebody what to do. There's something that you can dictate what to do. That's all by design. Smart house, smart TV, smart everything. And then that smart gains access into every aspect of your life. You all know that the smart TV can gain access into your home. The refrigerator can gain access and see and catch on what's going on inside of your house. Did you know that? It's not smart just because you think you can give it a direction or push certain buttons to do certain things as before you had to pull the lever to the door open for the refrigerator, for the freezer, for the door. It's smart for a purpose, and the purpose doesn't necessarily benefit us. It's smart, all right. And so that's what technology is doing around us. And I'm just asking today if we're thinking about any of those things. Or just do you acknowledge that as, so we'll start this off. This is what we'll do, because I got a great clip, okay? I'm going to go to this clip. It's really quick. It's Roland Martin. He talks about what we need, what Black people need to be able to excel. And I want to know if you believe that that is a compliment on what we've talked about yesterday. And then if you are willing to take these little nuggets, these little tidbits is a great piece of advice. If you're willing to take that and make it applicable to your life, or do you have an excuse? I want to know. Like if you're going to say, oh, that sounds good, but, because we're really good at that. That sounds good, but I don't. Oh, but I don't. That's what we say. But I don't. We're just quick to jump right on out. But I don't. So let's see what he has to say. I'm going to throw a couple more topics out there. This is going to be our conversation. And if you're quiet, I understand what that means. But it's okay. I'm going to give you enough stuff to at least think about if you don't feel like sharing your thoughts. I'm going to give you enough stuff to think about that you'll have to say, and maybe in your quiet time, you'll determine that you have to do something different and that you have to have some different conversations because it's going to have an immediate impact on your life. Because when you do nothing, it still has an immediate impact. So let's take a break and let's go to the clip.
Hey, of course, 54th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Not only that, it's also the anniversary of the lynching of Emmett Till. Here we are 54 years later and still fighting many of the same battles we were fighting 54 years ago. And of course, before that, in 1955. Here's what I think, what I need folks to understand. Again, it was called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That's an economic agenda and also a freedom agenda. So I think it's one thing for us to be focused on issues of police brutality, critically important. It's important for us to talk about criminal justice, critically important. But here's the piece. If we do not own our own economics, then we're going to be asking somebody else for our freedom. I'm talking about our own economics when it comes to Black cable networks, when it comes to Black newspapers, when it comes to Black radio, when it comes to entrepreneurs out there. You know, people talk about Colin Kaepernick and what he's doing, but guess what? He used $800,000 of his own money to give to various organizations in a $1 million commitment. If you don't actually have the resources to do that, then you can't do it. We've got HBCUs right now withering on the vine. Cheney University in Pennsylvania could very well shut down. Stillman is also gasping for air. Other other HBCUs. But this is what happens when you don't have the resources to actually do that. Again, it was a march on Washington for jobs and freedom. Our focus has to be one of economics. Why are we making a point about voting in these elections? Because here's why. When you have African Americans who've been mayors of Birmingham and mayors of Atlanta and mayors of Houston and mayors of other cities, you've seen them use the power of the office for economics. It was Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson who made the point. They believed in three things: the ballot, he believed in the book, he believed in the buck. The ballot, the book, the buck. That's education, that's voting, that's money. He understood that. But all too often, many of us are just focused on things that have nothing to do with those three things. If we want to achieve freedom, we better remove the shackles of debt and remove the shackles of asking somebody for our freedom. You don't ask somebody for your freedom. You do what slaves did. You buy your freedom. That requires money. Think about that as we move forward.
I want you to think about that. Did you hear what he said? You don't ask for freedom. That's what we're asking for right now. We're asking people, please, when you get into office, will you do right by me? Please, when you go and get into office, will you create policies that are going to benefit me? Do you think that the lobbyist companies go to these elected officials, these politicians, and say, please? They buy them. What did he say? You have to buy your freedom. Lobbyists buy what they want on the Hill. That's why you can't have any difference in insurance in Michigan, because the insurance agencies have ensured that they have bought the vote. That's why we're going to consistently talk about, aren't you tired? Like, at some point, that's just like going to the doctor. Do you ever expect to be healed, or you just want to be managed? Because all the conversations that we're having with everything that has anything to do with governance in this state is about being managed. Oh, well, the same conversations. Oh, we're being redlined. You think? I'm 46 years old. We've been talking about being redlined for 46 years. That much I know. And no one understands what Roland just said. I try to tell us that, but we sit and try to talk about we don't have the money. It's about buying money. What did he say? You buy your freedom. What do you think OJ did? That's why everyone was so mad. It wasn't the issue of OJ killed them or not. The issue was that OJ had the money to get away with it. And he did. That's the whole point that why people were mad. It wasn't because he killed those white people. The people didn't care about that. It was, how dare you, black man, have the money to be able to identify a legal team, to be able to create a defense for you that will keep you out of jail. How's that? Now, we're not going to talk about the shenanigans he was on after that got him in jail. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the simple fact that you had enough money to be able to change the narrative. The simple fact with Bill Cosby, that you have enough money. Bill Cosby was about to change some things. He was trying to make major moves. And then, because, do you notice to this day, that's who you still hear about is Bill Cosby? The Weinsteins, the the Bergs, all of those folks, you don't hear anything about their Lauer. Do I need to keep giving you those names? You don't hear anything about their issues. You don't hear anything about it. But Bill Cosby, you'll hear about him to this day. Because why? People shape the narrative because it's based on their inherent belief. And the belief that they want to perpetuate in our societies is that you have no power, that you have no money, that all you can do is consume, and that you're at the will of what we tell you you are, and that we're at the will of what we tell you you can do. And so what did Roland say? You buy your freedom. You have those three areas: indicating, voting, and money. They go hand in hand, not one without the other. You don't just indicate and then you vote. You don't just vote and then that's it. You don't just indicate and then try to throw some money out there. You have to identify what it is. You have to use your voice through your vote, and you have to have the money to back it up. You buy your freedom. You buy what you want. You wonder how all these policies are being made. You wonder how the Koch brothers are doing what they're doing. Because they buy what they want. They buy the legislation to support their industry. But we don't think that way because we were taught that we can't buy, that we don't have any power. But every time you look up, we're the major consumers. That's why everyone comes into our communities to rape and pillage our dollars. And we just freely give them to them. And for people that look like us who are peddling the same wares, we will fight all day to not give them the monies. Then we'll get mad because we want a discount or we want it free. And the more that other people identify a higher value, we'll run to pay all those exuberant monies and those dollars for that product because we want to be validated. Says who? Where did that even come from? Who are you trying to prove? It's easy to be elite amongst the poor. I keep trying to tell you all that. So explain that to me. And the lines are lit. I'm going to get to the line. But explain to me how there's a value that you're bumping your music in your $100,000 Escalade down the street where the actual value of a home on that block might be $5,000. That's the value? Everyone is going to shroud around you and hail you because they're poor. It's easy to be big fish in a little pond. The whole thing is then what do you take when you're the big fish? Do you try to go into the ocean? Are you trying to take those guppies who are idolizing you and make them into big fish? Or then you wonder why you're a target. See, then that's when the black folks, we don't get it. What did he just talk about? He talked about when we had power. He did the likes of those mayors. He should have included Detroit with Coleman Young. When Coleman Young had power, he made millionaires. He made people of power. So people don't have to come after you. You create your own army. You create your own support team because everybody's doing well. Everybody's eating well. That's what you create so then people don't have to come at you. Because if you're eating and I'm hungry, I'm going to come at you. So when I make sure that everyone's doing well, then I don't have that type of adversity. You know that the other folks are going to come at you because that's just what their mission is. But you don't have to worry about the people around you because everyone's eating well. And so no one has to go against you because you've looked out for everybody. But we don't have that mindset. We won't do it in our families. We want to compete amongst each other. You don't have anything. You're only as good as your family, whether that's direct or indirect, birth-given family, accumulated family. I consider you all family. But you're not going to have conversations with me where you don't want to talk about solutions and then you get mad at me. I get them every day. You want to sit and try to complain to me. I don't have time for complaints. I told you all my story. I don't believe that anyone that tries to tell me I can't do anything, I don't believe that. I'm living proof that I don't believe that. I'm going to figure it out. Hello? That's why you're superior. Even if you don't believe that it is designed for you and that it is in you and that you can be blessed exceedingly and abundantly if you line up with your purpose, even if you don't believe that, you should know enough that you have something up here that will allow you to actually think through, look at things with a critical eye, and get the information to figure out how to help yourself. You can't expect people to help you. You have to help yourself. Remember there was some comedian where he said, you got to help yourself. You got to help yourself. But maybe you don't want to help yourself because it's too much work. You all figured we did all the work in slavery. And we just was chilling on that. What did Harriet Tubman say? Well, shoot, I would have freed many more people if they knew that they were slaves. And so on today, we're walking in that same mindset. He gave us the 3 points indicating voting and money. You buy your freedom. But I don't believe we know what freedom looks like. From any angle, we don't know what freedom looks like. We get mad at the educational system, but we won't educate our own kids. We get mad because we don't have adequate housing, but if we have the opportunity to buy a house, we won't. We'll just rent. And then if we buy a house, we won't take care of the house. So we get mad about that. We get mad that we don't have the adequate services and the adequate goods in our communities. But when those of us who try to bring those into communities, we won't support them. We'll go to the other people who don't look like us, don't live in the community, don't have a vested interest in you, and you'll go and talk about the folks that look like you trying to do it versus going to sustain their business if you have to pay a couple dollars more. You all know it. I can go on and on. So it all just still goes back to us. And so if you don't want it to be better, then just say that. So I believe that all of us won't waste our time having the conversations. The NAACP is talking about the immigrants, but they're not talking about that now, for the first time in 18 years, there hasn't been an emergency manager. So now the concept of emergency manager is gone, but a lot of those people who were emergency managers are now still in cities as city administration. But when you've taken all the assets, when you've raped the cities of everything that they had that could sustain them for some type of revenue generation, what do you need them for again? That's like Confessions of the Economic Hitman. So when I see that you have something that I want, I'm going to create governance. I'm going to then come into your city, take what those assets are, put them up under my control to be able to divert funds to where I want them to go, and then I'm going to give it back to you. But there's nothing, well, what else? So what do you have? I'm just saying, City of Highland Park, what do you have? You gave away your water plant. A water plant. A water plant? You know, water is the most precious resource in the world, and you gave away a water plant. And there are going to be people, no, Collette, we didn't give it away. Yes, you did. You gave it away. If you want to sit and have these internal fights that you can't even determine how to create a deal, a non-exclusive deal, because you all don't understand the business of government, because you've never been any other place in these walls, and you've only been told what to do, so that means you have a slave mentality, and those people who've come in who have an acumen, who really want to help, you won't listen to them, and so you are stagnant, and there's a stalemate, and realize that action is still happening in that stagnation. And so much so then when there's a $20 million debt and we know that you can't do anything about it because you've already taxed the people to death, the people that are still here. And so now we're going to come in and take everything from you. So now all the cities that had emergency managers, the article right here. Michigan without state-appointed emergency managers for first time in 18 years. Then what? I'm just saying. So what does it mean? We didn't govern ourselves adequately then. So now you had someone else come in and govern you, tell you what to do, and we're not having that conversation. Oh, I'll add one more to the mix, and then I'll go to the line. Quote from Detroit Free Press, 1 in 5 Michigan kids in poverty. 1 in 5, new study says. So I'd venture to say if it's they say 1 in 5, it's probably actually 2 in 5 kids in poverty. Michigan ranked number 33, trailing 5 other Midwestern states, which include Illinois, number 22, Indiana, number 28, Ohio, number 25, Minnesota, number 4, and Wisconsin, number 12. How's that? In poverty. We don't talk about that, though. We want to talk about the injustice of the policy for immigration from a national perspective, but you're not fighting for policy right here in your state. You're not holding the party accountable for a policy that's going to have an immediate impact on the people in which we're governed by. Because maybe you just don't have the mindset to understand what that looks like and to get ahead of the game, because we're always being reactive instead of proactive. I'm going to go to the line. Let me see what you have to say. Because, it's just me this morning, so maybe you all just, maybe you just don't know. Maybe you don't have an opinion. Maybe you didn't think about that way. But I want to see what you have to say. Thanks for your patience and great morning to you.
Good morning, Queen.
Good morning, King.
Excellent subject, as usual.
Thank you, King.
Queen, I will always say this.
Mm-hmm.
My father, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, over 80-some years ago,
okay,
he wrote about this, told us about it, and prepared us for it.
All right.
And what you're saying, you're exactly right. And until we get up and do something for ourselves, it ain't a mystery. It ain't going to fall out of space. Everything happened. Ain't going to be no coincidence. It's going to happen. We got to get up and do something for ourselves, or we're going to perish. Yeah. And that's the time that we're living in right now. He taught us the true knowledge of God. He taught us the true knowledge of the devil. He taught us the true knowledge of self and our natural enemy. The government is not going to help us. We can forget about that. Yeah. We can vote. We can do all we want. But that system is not centered in making us the equal of them. They didn't bring us in for that.
Yes.
I'm not mad. I understand now. And so, Queen, just with the little knowledge that I received, I've got a lot in the neighborhood.
Yes.
I'm learning agriculture. I'm learning to grow my own food so I don't have to eat GMO foods.
Yes.
I'm collecting my rainwater so I don't have to use the poison water that comes into the house.
Yes.
I'm buying trees, fruit trees, I'm going to learn how they can. Hopefully, if it's the will of God.
Yes.
I'm going to get me a bee colony.
Yes.
I'm going to raise my own chicken for my own eggs.
Yes.
I'm going to keep my little block clean. Hopefully that I may affect or influence somebody else to do the same thing or whatever.
Absolutely.
Because it's difficult a lot of times to get our people to move because they're on a dead level. And when you're on a dead level, it takes people to move them. You know, the dead don't move themselves. You have to go and lift them up and move them around or whatever.
Right.
And this is the kind of people we are today, Queen.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right in what you're saying, Queen.
Yeah.
You know, but how many of us are hearing you, really? You are a voice from God, Queen.
I appreciate
you
that.
are actually, the Spirit of God is drilling, and it's coming out in your voice to us or whatever. All you're doing is echoing what God. You know, the God is alive in you. That's the bottom line. Your spirit is the Spirit of God. Spirit has to have a vehicle to operate in.
Yeah.
And you are telling us, and many more have been telling us.
Yeah.
And it's on each and every one of us, Queen, to get up and do something for ourselves. If we don't begin to love one another, don't expect nobody else to do it.
Right.
And we be deserving of death.
Right.
We be deserving for the white man to come down and kill every last one of us if we don't get up and start doing something for ourselves, Queen, with all the knowledge and history that we have. Queen, I know a sister that she educated her own children. Yeah. When they tested her a couple of weeks ago, they say she was a genius. The little sister, understand, can build her own computers, but she was home schooled because the sister wasn't afraid to buck the system.
Right.
She kept her kids out of the public school system, and she took the time and the sacrifice, and she educated her own children. Yes. And all of my geniuses, Queen.
Yes.
We have that same ability, but we too afraid. We're too fearful. Yeah. We so busy trying to make somebody accept us that ain't in their nature to accept us.
Right.
They will never accept us.
Right.
Never.
Right.
Never.
King,
and we have to build our own world, Queen.
King, I have to ask you, and I really want you all to buy into what he just said. I really want you to get what he just said. Do you realize that everything that he is accomplishing right now is who we were as sharecroppers? Y'all remember that? Remember that. We came from places where our foremothers and fathers raised our own. That's where we came from. And so it's so interesting how so many of us were so quick and fighting so hard to get away from that quality of life. We were doing organic food, so we were doing the Whole Foods, the Trader Joe's, all that stuff before it was hot. We were doing that. And remember, so many people grew up on gardens. Y'all remember that? Y'all forgot that? That's how we grew up. We did our greens, some of us to this day still do, our greens and okra and tomatoes and strawberries and cucumbers and bell peppers. We did those things to sustain ourselves. And because I believe it connected us back with nature and God and earth. And then all of a sudden that was just too much. We just didn't have time to do those things. And realize that when you separate from things that nurture your spirit, it ultimately kills who you are, literally and figuratively. So everything that King is suggesting this morning, that's what we knew how to do, but all of a sudden we act like we don't know. We act like it's not important. And then we go against each other that does that. People that do that. Just like you said, women who literally realize, there's that organization we talked about, the Mocha Moms. And women, black women, were getting pushback from other black women because they actively chose to leave the corporate world to be able to raise their children at home, homeschool, to create values and take the time to be a mother. It's a sacrifice. You don't get that? It's a sacrifice because you are literally raising another life. Do you realize what gift that is? But instead, the majority of us just let them run wild. We just let them run from conception till it's time for them to go to school. They're just out there. And we don't realize that those are the most formative years. That's when the computers are running. They're not afraid of anything. They're open to everything, and we don't put anything other than the TV. We throw them in front of a TV, and then we throw them in front of the radio. And you all realize that the little kids know they can tell you all the words to the songs. They just pick it up. It's just a little computer. They do all the dances and all the words. And so when I see little kids someplace singing all the words, I say, spell it. Stop right there. I need you to spell everything that you just said. If you're going to use that as a learning tool, I need you to spell it. I tell you, my dad, when we were little and we would go over to our family's house and all the little kids were dancing, my dad, we would sit right on down and act presentable. And then when my great aunt would say, well, oh, Carlos and Collette get up and dance, he said, we don't do that. My kids don't do that. Now, if you want to sit and talk about reading and spelling and all that, they'll jump right on in. But all that other shenanigans, we don't do that. And I just tell you all every day, I appreciate it. Everyone, if you have children right now, there's no reason why your children shouldn't be bilingual. And I told you all, it's not Ebonics and English. I'm talking about Spanish. They should be fluent right now. Fluent or like como está. Kids, they should be fluent right now. If you aren't going to be, especially those of you all who live in regions with Spanish-speaking folks, my sister in Texas, I told you there's no reason why your children should be fluent in Spanish. Y'all, come on, you all. We got to do better because we know to do better.
Queen.
Yes, King.
When the guy came to the city of Detroit, you know one of the first things he did when he would visit back home?
What?
He would go to their medicine cabinets, and he would clean them out. And this was back in the 30s. Yep. This was back in 1930, 1931, 1932, 1933. He would clean their medicine cabinet out. Why? Because he was really prophesizing that the future, they're going to kill you with medicine. You better go back and learn how to doctor on your own self. Queen, I'm learning that.
I'm telling you.
I'm learning the herbs and whatnot.
Yes.
I'm learning how to, if I get cut, how to take cayenne pepper and pack the hole. How to take honey to cure. How to take, if you lose a limb, you can put it in raw milk.
Yes.
And the raw milk will keep it from deteriorate or whatever.
Yes.
We're learning all of this, Queen. We used to do all of this, like you said, Queen. We taught them. We taught them. We taught everybody.
And then we forgot.
Go back. It's in us.
Thank you.
I love you, Queen.
I love you more. And then we forgot. Have an amazing rest of the day. Absolutely. And then we forgot. So we taught everybody, and then we forgot. I'm going to say this because we're about to go to break. Caller, I see I'm about to get you. And for all of you all, and you all don't have to, you're really not going to like me on this. We've had the conversations about cannabis. I told you all that I have 6 certifications in cannabis, that it's a business of cannabis. And everybody, oh no, it's the marijuana, and it's killing our communities. Okay, newsflash. U.S. approves first prescription drug made from marijuana. Ding, 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 ding. U.S. approves first prescription drug made from marijuana. Did you all know that? U.S. health regulators on Monday approved the first prescription drug made from marijuana, the milestone that could spur more research into a drug that remains illegal under federal law, despite growing legalization for recreational and medical use. This is the FDA approved the medication. And you all know me. If you follow me on social media, what did I do? I posted a picture of the drug. I identified its NASDAQ number, that's stock exchange. I've identified the cost of the stock because it's the business of it. You guys, stop it. I keep trying to tell you, we're going to get it one way or another. Everything that we keep trying to, so we buy into them telling us that it's wrong. And there are millions of people right now, white folk, who are making millions of dollars off of now cannabis. Why our brothers and sisters are incarcerated because of it. Y'all don't think something's wrong with that? You don't see that? All they do is wait for a way. It goes back to what Roland said, indicating voting and money. So they just created a way, just like in Prohibition with alcohol. I'm not going to create a way to legalize this so that I can make money. I just told you all, it's all laundering. How in the world do you not have something approved from a federal level, but you have municipal, state governments then having dispensaries and making these owners who can't put their money in a bank, but I'm making you all come and pay me for tax base and pay me fees, and then I take that money and put it in a bank. You all, do I need to give that to you again? Did you even just put that together? Or I'll do you one better. The main dispensaries that we're charging these application fees for, and by the way, Detroit, you really missed it. You should have been charging $5,000 a minimum like Ann Arbor did for their applications. So do the math. If it had 200 folks that needed applications, that's free revenue that's in your coffer, but you couldn't do that. That's too much like right. But that's just to open up. Do you know that plant is still not regulated? From seed to plant, seed to stalk. So we are not regulated what people are buying in these dispensaries. You don't even think about that. You don't know what the people are selling. You don't know where they're getting it from. You don't know what the impact or effect is going to be because we're not even thinking, because we don't understand the business of anything. We don't understand the business of our lives. We don't even know how to save ourselves. And everything else is happening around us, and you can't put two and two together because you're still talking about, oh, the marijuana is bad for the community. Your lisinopril isn't bad for the community. Your Afuride or whatever for blood pressure isn't bad for you. The Oxycontin ain't bad for you. The fentanyl, that ain't bad for you. You want me to keep going to all the prescription drugs that you're infused that have all these horrific side effects that just keep you on the zigs all the time? Never to cure you. We don't talk about those because we're quick to run to the doctor because we need some medication. The doctor. We don't even understand the business of that, you all. I'm just trying to tell you. All this stuff is happening around us and we're missing it because we don't have the mindset to understand what's happening. So we got some doctors in it, but we got some folks that are going to help us out the next hour because it's something going on with us that is prohibiting us from looking at our truths and saying why we can't accept who we are, why we don't accept that we can walk in our greatness and be successful in this America to make it a great for us individually and collectively with what we've been given right here. And that it's okay that we do it on our own. That's okay. We don't need everybody else to do it for us. And we can do it. It can be done. So everyone, we're going to, all the lines that let you all don't go anywhere. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to get everybody, got a special guest in the building. We're going to continue the conversation as we only do on Fridays, a coffee and conversation with Collette on WHBR TV 33, Comcast 91, Roku. We're streaming live. We'll be right back. Good conversation. You gotta tune in to Coffee and Conversation with Collette. That's me. Thursday mornings from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on the only station, WHBR TV 33. See you soon.